All right, thank you guys for having me again. My name is Vernon. As Eric said, I'm the Great Salt Lake Basin Planner for the Division of Water Resources. And for the last 6 months, I've been working on a project called the Great Salt Lake Basin Integrated Plan. I just wanted to take a moment to share the project with you, and the timing is fantastic because right now we have the draft work plan out for review. If this is the first year hearing of it, there's still plenty of time to review the document and provide a comment if you're interested. And then also tonight, we have an open house from 6 to 8. It's virtual, and you can join by going to our website and hopping on the YouTube link there. But this project kicked off with legislative funding during the 2023 legislative session or in fact 2022 legislative session. And I throw this picture up here to kind of, it's not a new picture to anyone in this room. I'm sure you all see this. This shows the lake level decline over the last 30 years. Definitely not a secret anymore, as it's gained worldwide attention. But for this project specifically, I put this picture in here because it illustrates the fact that we were able to do this large scale water planning project for the Great Salt Lake Basin because of the low lake levels. We're answering questions that probably could have been addressed many years ago, but now here we are jumping in, and we've got a lot of questions to answer as we look at water supply in the Great Salt Lake Basin. And the funding was allocated during the last legislative session as we're searching for answers to how to get water in Great Salt Lake. But I should say that this isn't a project that is solely for Great Salt Lake. This project will look at the water supply and demand for the entire basin, not just Great Salt Lake. So definitely pertinent to Jordan River, Jordan River Basin, Provo, and upstream. So I like to look at this project as a giant puzzle. That's how I wrapped my head around it. Is when you sit down to do a puzzle, you've got your box pieces, put out all the border pieces, you move along and you work through the puzzle and you think you're all the way done, but then you have these pieces to your puzzle and you don't have the complete picture. And that's how we understand water in the Great Salt Lake Basin. We have some surface and groundwater knowledge, but we don't have it all. We have these pieces, and we have data from some river basins that looks different from data from other river basins. We have apples and oranges. We don't have apples and apples. So when we're trying to understand the supply of the entire basin, we want to get on kind of the same page as far as water data, tools, and technology. And so that's what this project seeks to do, is to build these missing puzzle pieces, to find missing puzzle pieces and complete the puzzle. And so this is my puzzle. At the time looking at this, it's the Great Salt Lake Basin, 36,000 square miles, about 18 counties, 2.8 million or so people. So it's a huge project area, very complicated, a lot of complexity. And that's really, I think, I was doing a presentation yesterday and someone said, why hasn't this been done before? And I think one of the reasons it hasn't is because of the complexity. To do a project of this size is, it took the Great Salt Lake low lake levels over several consecutive years to really prompt this action because it's so complicated and complex. And so I think not only is it complicated, but it requires coordination and collaboration throughout this entire watershed, which is pretty massive. And so that's what I'm here to do and here to talk about. But the social and technical complexity of the problem, or of the plan, has been something that we've really been trying to wrap our heads around as a group. And I'll tell you about the different groups involved in this project in a minute. But we're hopeful that by diving in, that we can provide, we can make water management decisions today that will shape tomorrow's possibilities in the basin. So just to kind of highlight some of the social complexity, I'm sure you all know, when you're considering the Jordan River, some of the complexities that are probably similar to the basin-wide complexities, but you have the social challenges Throughout the basin, you have different people's values, beliefs, knowledge, awareness about the system, awareness of the importance of water in the system, and where the importance of Great Salt Lake, the importance of stream flow for ecosystem health. You have fragmentation, people kind of not understanding or not being on the same page, feeling isolated, disconnected from other groups. And then you have the organizational, institutional, and legal challenges. So what is legally permitted or what is allowed within your organization or institution or by law is oftentimes a hindrance to moving some of, or answering some of these technical questions. And then of course, technical complexity is just simply the water supply itself, understanding just exactly what water we do have, surface and groundwater, how we manage that surface and groundwater, and then land management, how do we integrate the land use portion of planning and management into water management. How do we quantify, how do we get all of the people talking in the same, along the same lines, using the same data, using the same equipment, things like that. So how do we quantify and all get on the same page about how we measure water in the basin? And then not to mention the environmental challenges for water shortages that start up, it could be top of the basin all the way down to Great Salt Lake. So in order to wrap our heads around this project, we know we're happy now that we don't have to go it alone as the state. I mentioned that this was funded by, this project was a part of HB 429, and that allocated $5 million to complete this integrated water assessment, and that will help us identify and evaluate the MPs to provide reliable water supply and meeting water quality objectives, agricultural objectives, accommodate anticipated growth and development, provide adequate flows, accommodate anticipated growth and economic development, provide adequate flows to sustain Great Salt Lake, wetlands, and other ecological functions within the Great Salt Lake watershed. But then along came the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, and they awarded us a water smart basin study grant, which is really complementary to some of the efforts that were already identified in HB 429 about some of the work that we will be doing. But their, kind of the highlights of their mandate for the basin study to provide a thorough trade-off analysis and help decision makers balance water supply and demand to avoid deterioration of agriculture industry and ecosystems. So you kind of see the parallels there, and then throughout the document and also in the appendices of the work plan, we have kind of a cross-check or crosswalk of how we're making sure we meet the requirements of each of those plans. And then in HB 429, we have these started calling them building blocks, but to me they appear like building bubbles here. So these are all of the components that go into making sure we can ensure resilient water supply for Great Salt Lake. So the first one, water supply, just how much water do we have in the basin and how is it being used? And water demand, how much water do our communities have? Or how much water does our communities need? How much water does the environment need? So it's how much, it's not just people, but the things in the watershed, being cognizant of what is required. Water quality, how can we integrate water quality and with a reliable water supply to Great Salt Lake and the environment, watersheds? What are some of the forest management practices and watershed restoration efforts that we can do that will help build a resilient water supply for Great Salt Lake and the watershed? How does stormwater management practices influence Great Salt Lake? That's something we've already kind of taken a look at for HB 429. And then finally, Great Salt Lake, how much water does Great Salt Lake and its wetlands need to support its beneficial uses? We have an idea or concept essentially for a lot of these, but just kind of drilling down and really understanding how to answer these questions thoroughly is what we've been doing over the last 6 months. And we've been doing that in this work plan. As I mentioned, is out for public review right now. And I'll dive just a little bit more into the building block definition stuff in a minute, but I think the important piece of the or this graph helps illustrate two important pieces of the work plan. One is the people piece, and the other is the technical piece. So the stakeholder engagement is crucial in this project. We can't have this massive project area. We can't connect to stakeholders and get support without getting the word out. And so that's what we've been and understanding what the issues are. And that's what we've been seeking to do. We did a situational assessment early on, about 6 months ago, to try and understand. We interviewed over 55 people trying to understand what their thoughts, concerns were in the basin about water, watershed management. And we held some focus groups to get a sense of what people's concerns were. We developed an advisory group for this planning process. And I should say, and I will highlight in a little bit, this project is a multi-year project, and those who jumped on board to help us with the advisory group and the steering committee, some are in this room today, and some they're in it for the long haul, and that's like a 3-year project. So the advisory group is the state and federal partners. So, and they kind of help set the sideboards for what's what's acceptable, allowable within jurisdictions, laws, ordinances, policies, things like that. But the Division of Wildlife Resources, Forestry and Oregon State Lands, the Division of Water Rights, we have U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, USGS, the Army Corps. They're all members of the advisory group, kind of overseeing what's happening. And I could also mention we've in some of these focus groups, the Forest Service, but going all the way up into the watershed, who are state and federal partners who are involved. And then the steering committee is the stakeholders who we've identified in the basin, and so representatives from the different watershed councils, from some of the industry groups, different stakeholder representatives. This is about a 21-member list, and those folks will be also seeing this process through and helping us understand what the issues are throughout the entire watershed. So that's the people part. Then we have the technical part. And the technical part is just really fleshing out or answering those questions about how to ensure resilient water supply, really defining what questions needed to be asked for those building blocks. You can access all of those. I think there are hundreds of them on our website. But then we did a literature review of existing literature and data. I'm sure you all know so much work has been done on Great Salt Lake and up into the watershed, trying to understand water supply and what the issues are in times of drought and in times of high water. So just understanding what's out there and making sure that we're not duplicating efforts moving forward. We conducted interviews with a lot of the technical folks who have maintain models for Jordan River Water Conservancy District, for example, the Weaver River, and just seeing what tools they have and what they want to have, what would be their dream scenario. Then we asking all of the questions from the building blocks, and just how can we answer the question about ensuring resilient water supply? How can we meet the goal of the project by answering key questions? And that's why we did the gap analysis. So the gap analysis looked at the missing pieces in that puzzle that I talked about. And so we went through and identified a whole list of projects that could be done. Some are already underway, some are already funded, some are not yet funded. What are the key things that need to happen in the next couple of years to help better understand and make informed decisions about water planning in the basin? And so then we reviewed all of those and then did a prioritization of projects, and I'll share those with you in a minute. Just to the right, it's kind of what this phase 2 or the work plan will be working on. And the center part is the decision-making track, and that's where we will dive into scenario planning, developing models and data, and continuing with our collaborative approach to reaching out with stakeholders. Some of the strategic research, capacity development, policy opportunities can also be, or will also be implemented at the same time. So I mentioned it before, but our advisory and steering committee groups, after much discussion, got together. The goal of the project ultimately is to ensure resilient water supply for Great Salt Lake and all its water uses, including people and the environment throughout the watershed. So many thanks to those who helped help us outline where we're headed. Speaking of where we're headed, this is the timeline for the project. I mentioned it's not going to happen overnight, but this is definitely a tool that needs to be developed. And so while other things are going on, other projects, other groups and entities are working on some more short-term solutions to transferring water to Great Salt Lake, or that understand the basin. These are the efforts that we're embarking on over the next 3 years. We'll be quantifying all of the water resources. Like I said, identifying what the supply is, assessing, validating the challenges and opportunities, evaluating options, developing and evaluating strategies and tactics. So doing kind of some scenario planning and trade-off analysis. If the climate does increase by X amount and the population does increase by X amount, and the Weaver River Basin and reservoirs are X amount full, how much water does that mean will make it to Great Salt Lake in a high water year, in a low water year? So just kind of some scenario planning, understanding what water we have to work with in the system, not so much a tool that has been developed before across the basin. And then we'll recommend actions based on the tools that we've developed throughout the process, and just have kind of a long-term decision-making tool that will help us better understand the system. And all the while, as I mentioned, continue connections and collaboration with our partners. This is an illustration of how the groups are connected to each other. As you all know, there's a new Great Salt Lake Commissioner on the streets, Brian Seed, and now his deputy, Tim Davis. They are kind of providing oversight and guidance throughout this process and have been involved in the process so far. And I think we'll only continue to use this as a tool as they move forward in their planning efforts. But the Division of Water Resources and the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation is really driving this. The advisory group and steering committees I mentioned will be a part of it. But then as we get down into the details and the nitty-gritty of the technical stuff, we'll be developing water budgets for each of the basins. So for Jordan River, we'll have a Jordan River Basin water budget and the Salt Lake Basin water budget. And conveniently, a couple of years ago, and I'm sure you're all very familiar with the concept, but their watershed councils formed, statewide watershed council, now the Jordan River Watershed Council, right? And so I think the opportunities for connection within each of these individual basins is a perfect fit for interactions with the Jordan River Watershed Council. So how we can bring information to the council, and you guys can bring your concerns to us. If there's like scenarios you want to run or help information you want to understand about water in the basin, you can come to the watershed council meetings and kind of have this back and forth relationship there. If people want to learn more about this planning effort, the Jordan River Watershed Council, so you can come and get information there. And I'm also happy to come back to those regularly scheduled meetings and update people about what we're doing or any what we're needing at the time. So this crazy looking graphic is just an illustration of all of the existing projects that are going on. We know that there's been a ton of work, as I said, HB 429 and the Basin Study are guiding the integrated plan, but we also know that there's been so much work done, and we want to incorporate that work into the basin planning project. So that's work that the Division of Wildlife is doing through the Utah Wildlife Action Plan. USGS is doing a lot of work on the Saline Lake Ecosystem project. We've got the Great Salt Lake Advisory Council, who's been doing work for over a decade on the importance and implications of drying Great Salt Lake. And we've got a lot of trying to understand groundwater through USGS and UGS. And all of these combined, we're hopeful that we can come up with a document that will help us ensure resilient water supply in the basin. And this is kind of the center part of that. There's a lot going on here, but this just kind of illustrates over the next couple of years how we'll be tackling the decision-making track. So this is continued collaboration with the steering committee and advisory group, but then we'll start to frame the scenarios that we want to consider throughout the process, developing those narratives, and then going all the way through to the trade-off analysis, and then all the while developing or refining our Great Salt Lake Basin model, which right now we use a model called Basin. We'll be fleshing that out and then developing this river basin specific models. So for the river basin. So this is kind of, like I said, the technical meat of things. And this is illustrated here with the proposed cost of the projects. And so as you see for that decision-making track is the top line in this graph, that these are the projects that in the gap analysis and through the prioritization that the steering committee and the advisory group identified as projects that would help us answer the questions in it that were realistic
first estimates.
and would help understand and make
Do you have
decisions.
any questions?
So development and capacity development. And so all these amounts are not set in stone and are subject to change, but this recommendation moving. So in the phase 2, this next, all all these projects that are happening. So we'll be doing with local experts in the area, and so keep your eye out for news on all of these projects.
Oh, like this process.
Well, on the work plan rollout, I mentioned we have the open house tonight, but we did release this the work plan in mid-November.
Yeah. Yeah.
November 15th.
I know about that. So our Friday the next week is our day.
And the review period in total is about 45 days. So the review period will end much. If you'd like to submit comments, please do so by then, and then we'll get a lot of that contract work that you saw earlier underway and get rolling in January. And I wanted to conclude with just one final plug that I think in order to ensure that this project is successful, and I think water planning in the Great Salt Lake Basin is successful into the future, that we really need to start thinking about how we are all connected to the water in this basin. In a closed basin, all this water is flowing downhill, and it's kind of going through all of these different water systems and literally going through all of us. And I think understanding the importance of the connection to the water within the entire system, not just within your basin or within your neighborhood, but really looking at the water as a tool that connects us all as we're trying to understand how to live in this semi-arid state and enjoy the things that we like to do and to ensure the health and sustainability of the resources that we need to. So just kind of shifting that thinking as we're all in this together, and it's not gonna be easily solved by one group, one entity, one industry, it's gonna take a village. So thank you for listening.
All right, thanks, Laura.
Okay.
Appreciate that.